Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the Qatar Association BATUC. Today, we've got a talk on gut health, and introducing the talk will be Ekta Kaur. Ekta is actually runs a homeopathic practice. She was formerly an engineer, and so I'd like to just welcome Ekta and ask her to introduce our speaker for today.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So, Sarianu Satsrikal, Ji Ayanu Matvanu, Gandiante, dearest audience, a very warm welcome to our seminar today. So, it's a very exciting topic. It is about food, and we all love food. So, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker today, Nishtha Patel. And we are very, very grateful, Nishtha, very grateful for your time and your support in our seminars. This has now become a lovely regular event in the Patois Association, and every few weeks we're hosting speakers, and we truly appreciate your time. So the health of the gut, what are we saying? The health of the digestive tract? I'm sure Nishtha will explain it further to us, but it's this relationship of our gut and how our health is expressed in that way. And as I started, food is so important in our lives. It's almost the center of everything we do in our lives. So what a brilliant connection. So without saying anything further, Nishtha, I am going to prompt you with a few questions, and we're hoping in that way you will share your knowledge with us. And then, dear audience, we will then hopefully have an opportunity for any questions to come in. We have an hour, so we have to work efficiently. And Nishtha, if you're ready, if we start. So let us start with you. Who are you? Where were you as a child? A feeling of you, please.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, Sastrikal, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak. And I'm Nishtha. I am a functional medicine practitioner and clinical nutritionist. I was made in Africa, born in India, moved here when I was 3, moved to the States when I was 17 because my family emigrated to the States. And then I got married and moved back to the UK when I was 22. I've had various careers, but this career as a clinical nutritionist and functional medicine practitioner started when I was actually in my 40s. I'm in my 50s now, but when I was in my 40s, because my daughter got sick whilst on a holiday to Alaska. She got very, very sick. We got back to the UK and she was suddenly diagnosed with proctitis, and that then went on to colitis. And obviously it was a scary time. We did everything that we were asked to do, but she wasn't improving. All I could see was the drugs were making her worse and worse. I was told diet didn't matter. I was told supplements are a waste of time and I should just keep doing the medicine. But 2 years we tried that, and she was on a barrage of medicines, steroids, chemotherapy, drugs, lots and lots of other things. She was getting from bad to worse. I then started studying nutrition. I started changing things. I started giving her supplements. I then went to the London College of Naturopathic Medicine, enrolled there, which was a tough thing to do in your 40s, you know, just changing career like that and going really heavy into the science and things. She had a colonoscopy and it came back completely clear. And the doctor had taken 2 years of trying to get her to do that. And I had gradually, and I'm not asking anybody to do this, it's not, you know, you shouldn't do this, but myself personally, I started taking her off the medication very, very slowly and started supplementing her. Then I was studying nutrition. I then went on to flying to America to do my functional medicine training. So I have been trained by the likes of, if anybody's into functional medicine, Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Terry Wells, Dr. Datis Karazian, those guys were my mentors and my teachers. I then went on to pass my certification in functional medicine, and now I run my own clinic in Harley Street. I also work for the London Clinic of Nutrition, and I'm just in negotiations with Crohn's Colitis Lifestyle in the United States, because that is a model that is really helping people with Crohn's colitis, and so I want to be able to help as many people as we can in this country. It's something I'm seeing a lot of. It's spreading quite a lot in South Asian communities. I'm seeing more and more people with this disease coming up, and it's starting at a younger and younger age. People starting to, I see babies coming in with this. I see young children coming in with this, but generally, typically, it's between the ages of 15 to 30, and often it starts even older in the elder generation too. Crohn's colitis is a serious disease that people don't know enough about. We all know about cancer. We all know about other diseases. This disease can be detrimental, where somebody's going to the toilet 15, 20, 30 times a day with blood in their stools, diarrhea, stomach pain, lack of absorption, assimilation. And a lot of people have IBS. IBS can often then lead to Crohn's colitis. So it's become my passion to educate people on the importance of looking after their gut, looking after the gut of your children or your grandchildren, because people don't realize that when you think of gut problems, you will look at things like IBS or Crohn's or colitis, but people don't often realize that, if you've got any anxiety or ADHD or any kind of mental health issues, 70 to 80% of your serotonin, which is your neurotransmitter, which you think is made in the brain, is actually in the gut. So if you're having mood problems, things like that, those neurotransmitters, serotonin is so important for sleep. It's so important for inhibiting pain, for mood, lots and lots of things. So that is like just one component of gut.
Okay, I am going to just come in there, because you have given us so much in the space of 2 minutes. And I think what we need to do for our audience is, I'm going to kind of slow you down a little bit, because there is so much information you gave us there. So let me just take you back. There are 2 key words I think that all of us will benefit from, for you to just expand on. One is you use the word functional medicine, and the other one is naturopathy. So if you wouldn't mind starting with just telling us briefly, what is naturopathy?
Naturopathy is everything you do which is closest to nature. When you are eating food with your circadian rhythm, you go to sleep, at the correct times, you wake up at the correct times, you're eating food that is in season, you're eating naturally, you are getting if you need to take things, they're usually found in nature, and you can, just how your grandmother would have done things back in the day.
How we would have done things in the village.
Yes, exactly.
So are you a naturopath?
I'm not a naturopath. I've studied at the College of Naturopathic Medicine. I do believe in that holistic, natural approach, but I'm a clinical nutritionist. So everything I do is clinical, evidence-based nutrition, researched, and the functional medicine part of it is a little bit more deeper than the clinical nutrition part. So
okay, so we understand where naturopathy comes in. So now can you just lead us into what does functional medicine mean?
Okay, so functional medicine is a movement that was brought about in the United States by a doctor called Dr. Jeffrey Bland, where they realized that actually going back, looking at basics, there is no one pill for every ill. I've just done a massive, about 4 years ago, I was flown out to San Francisco with Dr. Panja and Dr. Chatterjee to do Alzheimer's reversal. And there's a chap there called Dr. Dale Bredesen. He practices like a functional medicine model. And the best way he explains things is it's like having a roof with 36 holes. I'm talking about Alzheimer's as one part of it. There are different holes that need to be fixed in that roof. So if it is raining, you put medicine in one component. That is just one part. The roof is still going to carry on leaking. What about gut health? What's going on with your gut? What about oral health? There are so many other components. You've got to plug as many of those holes as possible. So functional medicine looks at everything. It's lifestyle. It's how you sleep, how you breathe, how you're moving. All of those things are going to get you from either to illness or wellness, right? So if somebody's eating on the go really, really quickly all the time, you're highly stressed, you are going to put your body into, it's not going to be in homeostasis. You're going to be out. You carry on doing that. You're eating the wrong foods. You're not sleeping enough. You're highly stressed. So functional medicine looks at everything from the time of your mother's health to when she was pregnant with you to every single year of your life. We do a timeline. So if you were a patient, my intake forms are like 50 pages long. They're really, really long. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. You're a health detective. You're trying to get to the root cause of your illness. So is it because you might have gut problems now? Were you naturally born? Were you C-section? We know now that naturally born babies pick up the microbiome from their mothers as they come through the birth canal. C-section babies are born into a sterile environment, into the arms of the doctor who's pulled them out of the womb. So their microbiome is different to those that are born naturally. Were you breastfed? Were you bottle fed? Antigens are different. Later on, you've got something in the gut called the gut microbiome. This is all the bacteria in your gut, and this plays a pivotal role in your health later on in life. If there is dysbiosis, if this bacteria is imbalanced, you can then start getting lots of other problems, when you've got psoriasis or eczema, asthma, things like that. Those can be down to what's going on with your gut. So in functional medicine, we are doing a very detailed history, not just of physical things, also mental things, emotional things. Were you as a child told that, I don't know, you were really dumb, something like that, and that stuck with you? So that's one other component that's kind of eating away at you. And then maybe you have had lots of ear infections when you're a kid and you're given lots of antibiotics. That's another component. So your whole history from birth to today is like a pattern. It's a fabric that's put together, and it has caused you, if you're ill, we're looking to find out the root cause of your illness, why it happened, when it happened, and why can't you get better.
So you're giving us, so the approach is you're looking at the whole history and then how you arrived where you arrived today. So we can all understand that. So would you say that functional medicine could be used, it's what I'm understanding it's an approach to the patient's current status. So I see that a GP could use the same approach. Could they not?
They can. They're not often trained that way. They are in America. You've got a lot more functional medicine doctors. You are getting more here now, which is great. And this is mainly, functional medicine is started off for doctors and surgeons in America. So most of the people in America are doctors and surgeons. Nutritionists in this country are trained to a higher level than those in the States, is what I've been told. I don't know for sure. This is what I've been told, which is why we were allowed to do that. But there's still only a handful of, it's a very long process and it's a really long exam. And most of the people that are trained are doctors in the States. In this country, we're getting more nutritionists trained in functional medicine. And there are doctors now training. I know a few doctors and GPs who have trained in it. And I work alongside many doctors because I think it is a really harmonious way to work, because we need each other. We don't have the skill set that the doctors have, and we don't call ourselves doctors, and the doctors don't have the skill sets that we have. So together we can it's the whole idea is it's in the best interest of the patient. What is best for the patient? How do we get this patient in the best mental, physical state that we possibly can to get their body?
Yeah. So it's the patient's quality of life, isn't it? That is what we want to do. We want to improve the patient's quality of life. So this is fascinating. So do you think Europe is also recognizing functional medicine, or?
In a big way. It's becoming a movement now, and it's becoming big.
Okay, so that sounds very encouraging for us. So you had given us in your background, you told us about the scenario, and you mentioned several things. You mentioned Crohn's disease, you mentioned Crohn's colitis. Lots of words came out. So I'm going to slow you down on that, and gauging on what we are expecting as a large part of our audience today. Can I ask you now to talk a little bit more with the title, Why is Gut Health Important, especially in the elderly? So we talk a little bit around there,
yeah,
please.
Sure. So with the elderly, as we age, we have hydrochloric acid. Like I'm going to give you a very brief, digestive lesson so that you understand the whole process. You know, the one question I get asked a lot is, but can't I take a probiotic? Will the probiotic can I just do that? Will it work? No, it doesn't work like that. So what I explain to my patients is digestion starts in the north and we head south. Okay, so when I say to you, if I just said to you, right, close your eyes, I'm going to ask you to think of a lemon. We've sliced that lemon and now you're putting that lemon to your mouth. Straight away, you're going to start getting saliva. Your mouth is going to start watering because your brain is sending that response out. Digestion starts that way. It starts in the brain. When you say to someone, where does digestion start? They usually say in the stomach, maybe in the mouth. It starts in the brain, and you've got lots of nerves in the brain that communicate with your gut. But the first, it's if you're walking past a bakery, for example, and you smell that really nice loaf of bread, your brain is telling you, oh, that smells nice. Your nose is then telling you. Then your mouth starts to salivate. Maybe you'll go and buy that pastry or that bread. Once you put that in your mouth, you start to chew. Chewing is the most important step when you first with digestion, because that saliva contains digestive enzymes. It's got something in it called amylase. It starts to break down that food. Your brain has to signal the mouth to produce the saliva. Often in the elderly, that the brain is not working as well as it should be as we age. So if you are finding that you're chewing your food, it's taking you a really long time to chew your food, or you're not producing enough saliva, you need to drink more water. Often that might be a first sign that something's not, it's slowing down in the brain. But that is the first part. Second part, you swallow the food. You should have hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Your stomach doesn't have teeth. So once you eat that food, the hydrochloric acid churns the food and breaks it down. It then makes it into a liquid ready for it to be dropped into the next part of the small intestine. Now, as we get older, we have problems with our teeth, so we can't often chew as well as we can. So if you're not chewing your food as well, it's going to have an impact on the hydrochloric acid. As we get older, our hydrochloric acid levels also drop. The role of hydrochloric acid is to keep out bacteria. First of all, it keeps everything nice and sterile. And it also breaks down the food. So if you're not chewing it properly, you've got bigger particles of food dropping into the stomach. Then your hydrochloric acid levels are lower. So you're not breaking up, your body can't break up that food as well as it should do. Then you've got a problem, because the food then goes into the small intestine, and you have then, it should all be made into amino acids and into liquid. But if you've got bigger particles, what happens is it starts to make little holes in the small intestine. Once that happens long enough, it's like a cheesecloth with a little hole, little hole, little hole, and then those holes get bigger. Then these bigger pieces of protein get into the gut, and things that shouldn't be getting in, get in, and things that shouldn't be getting out, get out. And then you can have a cascade of things known as gut permeability in the medical world, or a leaky gut in layman's terms. Then you start having a problem. That's how you're part of the problem with your osteoporosis or arthritis and psoriasis and things like that happen. So also, we are very low in vitamin D very often, and vitamin D is the gatekeeper to the gut. So what I do is I explain to people, it's like, imagine the guards at Buckingham Palace. They're standing there, the gates are closed nice and tight, okay? Say those gates were unlocked and the guards are not there, and you've got a whole crowd of people outside. What's going to happen? Those gates are eventually going to open and everybody's going to run in and run out because there's no one guarding it. So vitamin D is another important one, which often is depleted in South Asian people for many reasons. And also, if you haven't got enough vitamin D, the older we get, then those tight junctions start to open up. So again, you've got more of a leaky gut situation. If you have a problem there, like if you've got a problem with lack of hydrochloric acid, you're going to feel very bloated after you eat, very full. The stomach can often feel distended. You then have an issue because your pancreas has to be producing enough enzymes to break down your starches, your rice, your carbohydrates. That can often give you like burping and making your stomach feel like there's a brick sitting there. If the pancreas then has to stimulate the gallbladder to produce bile. See, from north to south, if any of those things are not working, you're going to have an issue. And taking probiotics is not going to fix it. And probiotics come in later anyway, because you've got the stomach, you've then got the small intestine where your absorption takes place. And if you've got those bigger particles going in and out and you've got issue there, absorption, if you've got an issue with absorption, you're then going to have an issue with your vitamin B12 and iron. And we often find we've got issues with these things. So it's so important to have enough. You should be chewing your food properly. If you've got any, as we get older, we often have problems with our teeth. So make sure your dental and oral health is kept up to scratch. If you've got problems chewing, you can do smoothies and do more things in a liquid form so that you're still getting those nutrients going in. Make sure you sit down and chew your food really well, eat mindfully. If you're low in stomach acid, there are things you can do to increase your stomach acid. And then if the bitter foods are another way of helping to stimulate the bile, the liver and the gallbladder. Often our diets are to blame because we eat so much like refined oils. We eat a lot of gluten. We eat things that are not going to help the gut, and anything beige is generally bad, beige food in general, apart from like cauliflower and things like that. But I'm talking about more carbohydrate things like breads, and we love our parathas and we love our sunflower oil, and I know with Gujaratis they love their chewro and their gantias and their fafras and all of that stuff. That stuff is causing more damage too. So protein status. Elderly are often lacking protein. The more protein you lack, the more of an issue it becomes with sarcopenia and muscle wastage, because you need that protein to be able to help your joints and your collagen support and your bones. So calcium is another one. If you've got issues with the gut and you're not absorbing, then none of your nutrients are going to be absorbing. So those are other things. Elderly are often dehydrated too. You forget to drink water throughout the day. That can also cause an issue.
Okay, so the thing is, while you've been talking, there is so much for me to write down. So what is coming across is that us as just an average member of the public is too much. It's too much information. Okay. It's too much to fix. So are you able to guide our audience on maybe, let's say, 5 basic things that we go away from today's lecture and we introduce 5 easy peasy lemon squeezy 5 things that all of us can add, and gearing it towards the elderly.
Okay, number 1, make sure you're drinking enough water throughout the day. So if you forget to drink water, a good tip is to maybe get a non-plastic, don't get plastic, plastic's full of other stuff. Get a good water bottle, fill it up, take it up to bed with you, okay? In the morning, when you're, overnight, your body's been working and your organs have been doing things, try and drink as much of that as you can. You're not going to be able to, if you're not used to water, you can't get up and drink that whole thing. That would be too much for you, but drink a little bit. Maybe drink that much today and do it again tomorrow. And then the next day, drink a little bit more until you work your way up. That will get your bowels moving. It will get your body hydrated. It helps your brain. It helps your blood cells. It helps everything. So that's the first thing. Second thing is try and make sure you get different variety, different colors of vegetables into your diet. So and even fruits. So every week introduce something new. If you are somebody that is eating, say, if you just love Pink Lady apples, for example, and you only ever buy Pink Lady, next week buy a different variety. Go and buy some Jazz apples, and then the following week do a Granny Smith, there's so many different varieties, but switch that around. Put in different colors, because every color and every variety feeds this microbiome I was telling you about, this bacteria that's in the gut. It feeds off of this fiber, and it is needed to produce butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid, which keeps your inflammation down. So change your variety of foods. Add in a rainbow. Think of a rainbow of foods. So when I have little children coming into my clinic, I give them empty rainbow charts, and they come in and they've painted these charts, and I'll say, what did you eat? And they remember. They will say, well, I had beetroot and that was red, and I had carrots and they were orange, and I had kale and that was green. So I try and get them to do 9 different colors. With the elderly, don't forget your blues and purples. We often forget those. So blueberries or even blackberries, cabbage, red cabbage, those things are really important for brain health. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4 is protein. Where is your protein coming from? If you're vegetarian and you're finding it hard to digest lentils and dals and things, you're getting a lot of bloating and gas and things, get a good quality like a vegan protein shake. That is there's one that I do recommend. It's quite expensive, but it is good because it's got all your amino acids and things in it. And so maybe and if you haven't got an issue with lectins and things like that, then your dals and things. But remember, if you're vegetarian, you need if you're eating meat, it's fine, because meat and eggs and fish have all the amino acids in that one piece of meat. But if you're vegetarian, you don't have the complete amino acid sequencing. So if you're eating dal, you need a little bit of brown rice or something like that with it. I say go for brown rice rather than white rice, because there's more fiber in there. It helps keep the bowels moving. It also balances out your blood sugar. When you're elderly, you need to have enough fiber. You need to have enough good fats in your diet, and you need to have protein in every single meal. So that would be my 5th tip. Protein, okay. Fat, fiber.
Okay, so you alluded to sunflower oil. Do you want to let us just know your views on sunflower oil?
I don't like anything that is refined. If you are going to be cooking things at a high temperature, the worst thing we can do, because we've been told sunflower oil, corn oil, canola, all of those things are good. Those are absolutely detrimental to our health, and they are causing us to get more heart disease and more problems. If you look back at history, just in India, before all of this was brought in, our grandparents, you know, and people before them, we were eating ghee, and now we're all so scared of eating ghee. Ghee in moderation is not bad. Like, you know, if you want to cook with ghee, I'm not saying put tons of ghee in there, but if you're using a teaspoon or even up to a tablespoon in a day, ghee is high in butyrate. It lines that gut lining. It also has a high smoking point, so it's not going to be cancerous. Like when you heat some of these oils up to a high, they don't have a high smoking point, they then become carcinogenous, which is cancerous. So, and they really damage your arteries. So cooking oils at high smoking points, if you're okay, coconut oil, ghee, avocado oil, those have all got high smoking points. Olive oil is not, there's jury's out with olive oil. Some studies say it's okay, some studies say it's not. So I tend to say with olive oil, any cold pressed oils, drizzle them on your salads, drizzle them on your vegetables. But if you're cooking and you're heating things up to a high temperature, those are the three things I like: coconut, ghee, or avocado.
Okay, now coconut oil and avocado oil sound expensive to me. So how does the average person satisfy this requirement?
You don't need much of it. You can get a little, well, you only need a teaspoon. You're not using, it should not be the main staple of your diet, and you shouldn't be going through tons and tons of it. If you are going to have a problem with your saturated fats and your cholesterol and things like that. So.
Okay, that's lovely. So can you just tell us what this vegan shake was that you recommended? Somebody has reminded me to ask.
It's called Veggie Fusion, and it's made by Mother Earth. And there is a website called Amrita Nutrition. And
so Bhupinder Viji, could you put that in the chat so everybody can see it then in the chat, please? By Mother Earth, Amrita
Nutrition, Mother Earth Labs, and it's called Veggie Fusion. I usually go for the vanilla one. I quite like the vanilla one. It's made out of, it's very clean, it's brown rice, but it is expensive, it's not cheap, okay, but it is the purest one I have found. If you want to, if you phone them up and tell them I'm your practitioner, you can get 10% off.
Okay, that's really lovely. So, dear audience, I also recommend and suggest Nishtha Patel has got a Facebook website. So after today's lecture, if you're interested, there is a lot of useful information on the website. May I call it a website? A Facebook website?
A Facebook group. It's Facebook group. It's called Nishtha Patel The Gut Expert. And it's Nishtha spelt with an extra H, Nishtha Patel.
Okay, lovely. I had a question about, just going back on the water. Did you have any views on the water having to be warm for its maximum effect?
Warm water is always better. It is always better to drink.
Why?
When you can, because it is almost like, you know how the Chinese, if you look back, they only ever drink warm water because they believe that in traditional Chinese medicine, they say that you solidify things more if you're drinking cold. And also when you're drinking warm, things move along much faster. It's really more beneficial for your chi energy and for digestion and for just moving food and things along.
Okay, lovely. And just before we move on from this sort of topic, I had a couple of questions here. One said that a lot of our food is deep fried. Now, we are all about taste, aren't we? So when we are starting to make changes, there tends to be complaints within the family circle that things aren't tasty or they're bland. So we have to accommodate everybody that we're living with. And so I think everything you've suggested is quite a big change in some families. So let us say that, yes, we will allow a few deep fried foods. So what oil would you recommend for that?
This is like the $1 million question, because I just have stopped frying, because my husband has had problems with his heart, and that's it. You're not having fried food anymore because it's damaging your arteries. I bought an ActiFry thing, the Philips do one, or any of the upstand, not the Tefal one that goes round and round, but it's the one that's got a thing in it. I make everything at home. I brush it with a little bit of like avocado oil or something, and then I put it in there, and it does crisp up and it doesn't taste bad. But it, if you're having something once or twice a year, it depends. People say, I only have it occasionally. What is occasional for you? Is it twice a week? Is it once a week? Is it once a month? But you've got to remember that these little habits, that we have, it's where do we want to be in 10 years time, 15 years time, 20 years time? You want to be on a bunch of medicine? Do you want to be, having issues with the heart and things? Or do you want to live your best life and be able to walk and do these things? So it's making those lifestyle choices. Occasionally, if you have the odd deep fried thing, it's not going to kill you. Occasionally meaning maybe once every 4 or 5 months, something like that. But if you're having it weekly, or you're having it's every single time, it's going to be damaging the arteries. You're going to get these little, just how you get a leaky gut, you get leaky arteries, you get leaky valve, we get diabetes, so it is making those lifestyle changes and teaching the younger generation, because don't forget, our eating habits get passed down to our children. And then, sometimes people say, oh, but that's hereditary. It's hereditary. We've all got it in our family. Why is it hereditary? Because everybody's been eating the same way, generation after generation after generations. If we don't make those changes, we are going to get sicker. There's no easy answer.
So what we are saying is that it's about lifestyle change, and make it a gradual change, and let it be a habit. Because if it's a habit, then we won't miss it.
Exactly.
So it's like a slow change, and make it your new habit, that you're always having your warm glass of water. You're trying to achieve that target bottle. So a gradual habit change, which is your lifestyle change. I've had one, as expected, lovely question about sweet things. Is there anything that we can say, it's okay, you can have a bit of sweet, or you can have this particular sweet thing?
Sweets, yeah, there are ways of getting around sweets. I mean, look, sugar is sugar is sugar, okay? Whether you call it coconut sugar, or you call it, just cane sugar, or you call it maple syrup, your body is gonna process it in exactly the same way. And diabetes is a massive problem for a lot of us now, like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. My daughter has a page called the Note Cook _ on her Instagram, and she does healthier versions of really nice recipes. And she has, like, she did a mango tart the other day. So she used a mango, she used passion fruit. She had no added sugar in there, but the sweetness came from the mango. And she did the tart in a almond flour base. There was no gluten in there either. You wouldn't have even known that you are not eating something full of rubbish, and it tasted sweet, it tasted beautiful. It's getting really clever with working with things like that. And she does that, like, she's got a lot of recipes on there if you want to have
that sounds good. So again, we're coming back to the idea that yes, we enjoy our food, but we need to now start being more clever about it, if we want to avoid trouble later on.
Dark chocolate, which not everybody likes, it's an acquired taste. Dark chocolate actually has benefits to it. So if you're having 2 squares of dark chocolate every night, that's fine if it's 70% and above, because it's actually got flavonoids and antioxidants in it. So it's actually good for you. So making little changes like that can also help. And a really big tip I tell patients is start just really appreciating your food and chewing it and spending a long time chewing it, you will notice, I promise you, you know how people eat on the go sometimes, or everyone's running into McDonald's and grabbing some chips or something. I challenge you, eat that chip, put it in your mouth and chew it really, really slowly till like 15, 20, 30 times. You won't like that chip after you've had one or two, because you will taste the lard, the oil and the fat in there. And you really will notice how different it tastes. So if you start appreciating your food, because a lot of us are in the habit of just eating food fast, slow down, take your time, appreciate what's on your plate, smell it. You know, often who prays anymore or does anything? Even I don't do that, but I do tell patients to do that. And when they're in this habit of, you know, just being on this hamster wheel of not knowing what to do, just taking that time and getting into the habit of doing that, you'll be able to change how much you eat and how you eat, because it takes the brain 20 minutes to signal to the stomach that you're full. So if you're eating your food slowly and you're appreciating it, you will appreciate all the flavors in that food. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember my grandfather telling us to chew our food 20 times. So he must have been told by his mother, you know, back in the villages. I must have just quickly just go through a couple of questions here. Somebody's asked about rapeseed oil. Have you got any views on that?
Rapeseed oil, again, is a refined oil.
So,
anything refined, stay away from.
Okay, so this myth we had that rapeseed oil was better than sunflower oil, for you they're all the same level.
Yeah, unless it's cold pressed. If you've got cold, but that's expensive, right? If you get like pure cold pressed sunflower oil or cold pressed rapeseed oil, then that's different. But everything is usually, the cheaper oils are all refined, and when they're refined, they have had stuff added to them, and they've been made in a factory in a way that causes a lot of damage to our arteries. It's the number one thing, that and sugar. And sugar's not just sugar in the white form. Sugar is the form in all beige foods. So, you know, our white flours and our pastas that we eat in this country, and pizzas and all those things, they sugar and cause issues to our arteries, our blood sugar levels, our bones.
Okay. So if somebody really had to have sugar because that's the only way they feel happy, do you have a view on honey?
If you're going to replace the sugar, I know a lot of people who really want sugar in their teas, for example. I would say go for jaggery then. And again, be careful how much you have, because at least jaggery has a little bit of fiber and it has a little bit of iron in it. Honey, maple syrup, date syrup, they're fine as substitutes, but be mindful of how much you're using.
How much you have. It always comes back to little of everything.
Yeah.
For that balance.
Yeah. And you've got to live your life too. I'm not
exactly
just do this. Fine. If you want it on occasion, have it, but just be mindful of what you're eating and enjoy it. When you're eating it, enjoy it, but make it a treat, not a lifestyle. You know, make lifestyle changes, not a habit. And
okay. And just there was a question about the air fryer.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to the deep fried. Is any views on that?
As in, is the air fryer is better because you're not immersing the whole thing in all that oil. You can brush it and then cook it and bring it out, and it comes out, you know, your samosas and things, they do come out pretty crispy in there. They're not bad.
Okay, lovely. I think we are covering all of those quick questions. There was somebody who was just reminding fresh fruits. Just the sugar and fresh fruits, how do you feel about that?
So again, you know, people are like, oh, you can't eat mangoes, they're really bad for you because they sugar your blood. You know, yes, if you have 3 or 4 mangoes, of course they're going to do that. If you have the one mango and you enjoy it, fruit is better eaten away from any other food. So eat it on an empty stomach, because if you eat fruit, you know, some people have got a habit of eating their dinner and then eating fruit straight after, or mixing fruit with yogurt. That then causes fermentation and putrefaction in the stomach. Fruit digests very quickly. So eat it away from things. And again, it's mindfulness. I don't say don't eat fruit, because fruit has got lots of nutritional value in it. But if you are eating like a mango and a pineapple and then a kiwi and then something else, that is still going to sugar. So you've got to be careful, but eat it mindfully, eat a little bit. And a great tip I give people with, like, I often do this, like if I'm working all day, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I might be really hungry. And what I will do is I will get an apple, I'll core the middle bit out, I'll slice it, and then I'll put a little bit of peanut butter or nut butter in it. If you eat, or you have a little handful of nuts with it, it stops your blood sugar from spiking up really fast. So it keeps it balanced, because you've got your protein, your fiber, and your little bit of fat in there. So eat it with, nuts are okay to eat with fruit, because it balances the blood sugar levels out. And if you want your piece of fruit, enjoy your piece of fruit, but don't have 3 or 4, or, you know, like a bowl this big. Just be careful, mindful again.
Okay, that's interesting, because a lot of people have fruit after as dessert. So it's not what you would suggest as the best plan.
Leave at least 2 hours if you've had dinner before you.
Okay. So there is this, I thought it might be useful for us to learn your views on gluten intolerance, the gluten whole scenario, because there seems to be almost like an explosion of more and more people being told that they're either allergic or they're intolerant, or we say soot nahi karda, you know. So what do you feel about gluten?
So gluten, I do a lot of work with Dr. Datis Karazian, who is like one of the leading clinicians in all of this. He's Harvard-based. So I've done a lot of my training and learned a lot from him. So gluten, there are 2 things. You may not be celiac. To be celiac, you've got to be tested quite a bit to come to that conclusion. There is something called non-gluten sensitivity, where you get very similar reaction, but you're not celiac. I find in practice, gluten is a problem. They've done a lot of research now, and there are studies that show that gluten, for any of us, any single person here today, we eat gluten. What's going to happen temporarily is the tight junctions that I was talking about are going to open up. Every time we eat gluten, those tight junctions open up and particles get in that shouldn't be getting in, and things that get out. If you are genetically okay, the rest of your body is able to function, and you're not eating lots of it, and mostly it will close back up after a few days. The gut lining regenerates very quickly. The problem we have is our diets have changed so much, and the manufacturing process has changed so much, because gluten, grains, wheat is the fastest growing grain, and with the world population increasing so much, they need to grow a lot of it and turn it around fast, and they use it in everything from food to meat. You know, they bind meat together, it's bound together in coffee. You'll find gluten in places you would never imagine, shampoos, all kinds of things. And the way the gluten is grown is it is covered, it's sprayed in something even before it's grown with a chemical that is then put into the soil. The wheat grows, it's sprayed again. If you think about back when they used to spray, they'd spray from the air, or somebody would have like masks on from head to toe while they're spraying it. So if somebody needs to be protected to spray that, it's common sense. What's going to happen if it's in the grain, it's in the soil, and it's growing? So gluten has 2 branches. It's got a lectin branch and a gliadin branch. It's 2 parts of the gluten molecule, the wheat. Both can cause problems. You might be reacting to gluten, or you might be reacting to lectin. And the way those chemicals are made, if an insect comes along and it nibbles at the wheat, what it does is it is intended to blow up its intestines. So obviously we are much bigger than insects, but if you think of somebody's diet, it's called a SAD diet, the standard American diet or standard Australian diet. It's the same in Britain, or even how we are these days. You might have Weetabix for breakfast, so it's got that wheat in it. If you're drinking instant coffee, again, it's got the gluten in it. You might have a biscuit and a cup of coffee or tea or something at 11 o'clock. Again, you've got more wheat. At lunchtime, you may have a sandwich. Again, it's got wheat. In the evening, you'll have your chapatis or whatever, and again, you've got the wheat. So every time you're eating that, you're opening up the tight junction, and then you're opening up, you're opening up, opening up. If you are eating that kind of diet 365 days of the year, your body might be able to cope with it to a point. After a point, it will tip, and then you will start running into issues. So that is the problem with gluten, which is what I say to people: be mindful of, if you haven't got issues, it's fine, but be mindful. Try and get your vegetables in as much as half your plate should be full of different colored vegetables. One piece of protein the size of your palm, and some good fats like half an avocado, or your nuts and seeds and things like that.
Okay, so what about dairy? Is taking, what I'm trying to ask the question is that what I'm getting an indication from is that I need to minimize the gluten in my diet, because I'm not formally diagnosed that I have a gluten allergy, but it makes sense for me to reduce the gluten in my diet. So what about dairy in my diet?
So dairy is an interesting one, and there's people often get confused with an intolerance and a sensitivity and an allergy. Those are three different things. See, when you've got an allergy, that's an IgE reaction. You have an allergic reaction to something, you're going to react straight away. Your throat will close up, or you'll break out in like wells or something. That's an IgE allergy. Then you've got a intolerance. Intolerance is some lactose intolerance. So you've got an intolerance to the portion of the dairy, the protein in the dairy, lactase. When you drink it, it will then give you diarrhea, or it will give you problems. Gluten and dairy they share a sequencing. So without getting complicated, I'll try and make it really easy. It's a genetic sequence that the body, whenever you ingest gluten or whenever you ingest dairy, it can often, it's a process called molecular mimicry, where the body doesn't recognize whether it's gluten or whether it's dairy. So just how we have genetic coding, food portions and proteins have genetic coding. So for example, if gluten was XY, XY, ZZP, dairy might be XY, XY, NTS. But because they both share that XY, when you ingest it, the body, if you've got an intolerance or a problem with one of the proteins in the gluten, it may recognize the dairy protein as the same and mount an attack on the body in the same way. So, and dairy, they say, if you look at a mother's milk and you look at cow's milk, the molecular structure, the antigens are very, very different. Breast milk is very thin, cow's milk is very thick, and it's made like, breast milk, you've got baby this big and it's growing. Cow's milk, you've got a baby this big, it's got to grow this big. There are things in dairy that can cause issues with mutating cancers and things. There's research out with that. So there are two schools of thought out. Although you need the dairy for calcium, so if you are going dairy free, you have to get your calcium sources in other ways. But we are the only species on the planet that drinks another mammal's milk, and that too into our old age or much later, so there are different schools of thoughts out about that. But if you're stopping dairy, then please make sure you're getting enough calcium through sort of dark green leafy veg, sesame seeds and other ways if you're not,
Because having a bowl of, we say, having a bowl of yogurt in the evening. A lot of people do that, thinking that that's a good thing for us.
I don't necessarily. There's so many different schools of thought. If you are not reacting to it, you're not getting dairy, you haven't got autoimmune issues, dye is very different because it is fermented and it is more easily digestible and broken down in the body. So it's very individual to the person. If you've got autoimmune problems, then yes, generally we say go dairy and gluten-free for that reason, because of the molecular mimicry. It's more milk and cheese and things that can cause worse issues.
Okay, so we are now almost there. And what I've hoped is that I've picked up all the questions from the chat and brought them into our conversation. There were some very specific ones on people's very specific conditions. I didn't go into those questions because I feel that those, they may want to contact you directly and then ask, directly about those questions. So we have our 5 top tips, which are brilliant, because I wanted everybody to walk away with something they could do this evening. And as a final question, which I think a lot of people will be thinking is, come 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the evening, you feel peckish. And that's when it all goes wrong. You go and pick a biscuit, you go and pick some gatia, you go and pick a laddu. What can we do at that 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m. point of crisis? What should we do?
What you need to do, I promise you, if you eat your dinner and you've got that fat, you've got that fiber, and you've got that protein, if you're eating enough of those things, you won't get that 9 o'clock surge. But if you do, that's when you have, you keep your herbal teas and things ready. And that's when you do something like that. The only time I will tell you to eat something at night is if you are waking up in the middle of the night, and you don't not to pee, or you just don't know why. You might be possibly a little bit hypoglycemic, where your blood sugar's dipping. Then I will say, have a little bit of protein, have, maybe a slice of apple with a couple of nuts or something like that. But generally, if you are eating enough protein, fiber and fats with your meal, you should not be hungry by 9 o'clock.
Okay, so the answer is eat properly during the final meal. I have one question here that's just come in, if you wouldn't mind answering. And the question was, what are your views on laxatives for occasional gut clearing mechanisms to keep the gut in good condition? Do you think that's of value?
Occasionally it is fine. The problem is when people get reliant on laxatives, what happens is your bowels start to get very lazy. The peristalsis that it should be doing naturally won't work. So try and do it naturally by increasing fiber, magnesium and vitamin C taken together. Obviously work with your practitioner, but those two are quite safe. At higher doses, they do give you the runs, but it clears everything out nicely. And even good old castor oil, it works. It's not very nice, but it works. It will give you a clearance. But I wouldn't rely on laxatives every day. Get more water into the system, get more fiber, start eating more nuts and seeds, walk. It's really important. That's another thing we didn't talk about, is walking, especially for the elderly, because you need that weight-bearing exercise to keep the bones, muscles healthy, but also the peristalsis, because when you walk, it moves things along in the gut.
That's lovely. There are so many questions. I'm sure everybody will want at least another hour with you, but it's time now. And I really want to say a big thank you to you. I want to remind our audience that Nishtha does have a Facebook group, and VG has put the links up, so if everybody wants to keep a copy of that.
I'm also on Instagram. If anybody's on Instagram, it's thegutexpert_, and my website is thegutexpert.com.
Lovely. And there was several times people asked about the names of the doctors you mentioned. I would suggest that we just guide them to your Facebook group, and will they be there, the names?
I can just send me a message and I will let you know. But there's Dr. Chatterjee, you must know, he's on the TV all the time, Rangan Chatterjee, and Dr. Ayan Panja.
Lovely. And I've had a lot of people saying a very big thank you. Thank you so much for best information. I've had lots of thank yous here. So I would like to convey them again to yourself and personally and on the behalf of the group. And we are now at 3 o'clock. So thank you. And Virgie,
thank you, everybody.